This is the podcast Your Spiritual Shift with hosts Jennifer Matthews and Carl Gruber. Your Spiritual Shift podcast. It's a show based on their online program of the same name. That's where Carl and Jen guide you to remember and implement into your daily life the truth about who you really are, a child of all that is, your source. We invite you to join Jen and Carl for each and every episode as they explore in depth the teachings and principles of true non-dualistic spirituality and their practical application. You can live your life without the ego's lack, attack, judgment, and guilt and thoughts of sin, and replace them with truth, unconditional love, innocence, pure joy, abundance, and a unity of purpose. Now, here's Jennifer Matthews and Carl Gruber with Your Spiritual Shift.
In our incredible lineup of light workers, quantum energy healers, channels, ascended masters, intuitives, and teachers of true spirituality, continue here on this podcast, Your Spiritual Shift. Hi, I'm Carl Gruber, along with my most awesome co-host, Jennifer Matthews. We welcome you to this new episode of yet another amazing and enlightening guest. Before we check in with our guests, please make sure to take a moment to click that subscribe button below so that you never miss a single episode of this show. Now, here's my buddy, Jennifer Matthews, to introduce our featured guest to you.
Thanks for that, Carl. Hey there, spiritual shifters. Welcome back to another incredible interview. Now, today we're actually going to be talking to Sarah Lawrence, and I've known Sarah for probably a couple of years now, and she is absolutely amazing. She is an Akashic Records Intuitive, an empath, a psychic medium, a reflexologist, an angel card reader, a remote viewer, an expert in NLP, and so much more. And that is just the beginning of her talents and expertise. Now, she's got so much to tell you, so I'm really looking forward to you learning about her story. So welcome to Your Spiritual Shift, Sarah.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Carl. I'm so happy to be here, and hello to everyone out there.
Yeah, and we're so happy to have you here. And like I said, I've known you for a little while now, and I was really excited to have you on this program. And so before we actually get started, can you give us a little bit of an insight into your story and how you came to know the Akashic Records and stuff?
Yes, thanks for asking. So I think it's true to say I've always been highly sensitive. Even as a small child, I was aware of people's energy in unusual ways and things that happened in environments in odd situations as well. But I never really had any languaging for it or anyone to share that with. So I went through my life, stuffed all those kind of experiences down like a lot of people do in their teen years, carried on very much focused on work, different types of jobs, married to two different people, and then on the second marriage in kind of around my late 30s, early 40s, when I had kids, energy started to open up for me. Cut a long story short, I got involved in reflexology and energy work. And after 5 years of practicing energy work, I found myself having a spontaneous opening to the Akashic Records.
Nice.
And I think probably when I look back on it now, the energy work kind of set me up to do that with all that experience and work in a particular form of energy work called the EMF balancing technique. So some people on this call might have heard of that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so before we get started, can you just give our listeners a bit of an insight into what the Akashic Records are and how they may affect each and every one of us?
Certainly. Well, I think the easiest way, because everyone, you hear lots of different definitions about the Akashic Records because we are all awakening up to this fifth dimensional energy or fifth dimensional awareness. But one way I like to describe it is as a particular type of electrical energy that can be sensed or felt. It comprises of our energy field. It's, if you like, stored in our bodies, even down to the DNA level. Sometimes we can be aware of it through our chakras, our nervous systems, parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system. So you can think of it as a multi-dimensional level of consciousness that we can choose to tune into. And not only people have Akashic records, a house can have an Akashic record. A genus of trees can have an Akashic record. Guess what? Gaia also has an Akashic record. So it's a massive database of information, if you like, at an energetic level. That's the way I like to define it.
I've had on my own solo podcast, World Awakenings, I've had Lisa Barnett, who's the author of Akashic Records, the pathway to, or I'm sorry, the insight of the Akashic Records. She describes Akashic Records as a library of the soul. Is that appropriate?
Yes, we could certainly use that term. What I found in my experience and working with clients too is because each of our energies is so individual, we each have an individual divine soul blueprint, which is our soul origination information. Layer onto that our experiences of many lives, and then whatever our current experiences of present life are. It's my view that we kind of all have a different frame of reference when it comes to how we relate to the Akashic records. So, you know, from Lisa's perspective, I'm sure that's the exact truth for her, the divine truth for her, if you like. For me, it's much more of an energetic experience, because that is the way a lot of my gifts come through, kind of at the energetic sensory level.
So each of us, obviously we all have our Akashic records, and are we all able to tap into those Akashic records? Is there some way, or do we have to be like of a certain energetic frequency to be able to access them?
That's a really fascinating question. My view is that the majority of people could choose to learn to access their Akashic records.
Okay.
As far as frequency goes, though, because that's a kind of like a two-layered question, the other aspect of that is it kind of happens when people are ready. Yeah. Because it's from what I've learned so far after 10 years of giving readings to date, is that people have a certain level of expansion or vibrational awareness, and when it hits a certain expansion, I wouldn't want to call it level even, because that's too much of a human perspective, you know, just think of it as like a flower opening or something. Then people start being able to consistently be aware in their consciousness of the fifth dimension. And that is where the information about the soul and the Akashic records is stored. So a lot of us are very comfortably beginning to hit the fourth dimension now on a more regular basis, and this is because many more people are meditating, working on themselves, doing yoga, you know, Tai Chi,
and they're more curious. They're more curious about it now. And I think that when 2020 and 2021 hit, especially in 2021, because that was a hard year for a lot of people, it was a year I found that there was a lot of spiritual awakening happening. Like the energy on the earth was so different than I've seen in my lifetime. It was crazy. And even just personally, it was a difficult year. But because of personal transformation, and I think that we've come into 2022 with a whole new set of people that have awakened, a whole new set of people that are on their journey, which is awesome. I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for trying to help people to recognize their consciousness, to recognize that they're capable of anything. And so I think that's amazing as we've come into 2022. So why is it important then that people can access their Akashic records? How can that actually help them on their journey towards awakening, on their journey towards enlightenment? How can the Akashic records help?
That's can you say cracking down under, Jennifer? You say that's a cracking question. That might just be a Northern Irish expression, but it sounds cracking Australian, question. Doesn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's a cracking question. Yeah. So, you know, how can it help people evolve? Well, think of it like this. Just imagine if you were an incarnated being walking around on a planet, and there was all this information you could access about all the different ways you've ever done everything as an incarnated being. Do you think that would be useful to access, maybe?
That would be so much fun. I know, because Sarah actually did a reading for me, and I still refer to all of that information, don't I, Carl? I came back and I'm like, Carl. Because it's so exciting to learn about, whether you're learning about your past lives, whether you're learning about your origination, which I found really fascinating, or whatever it is. It gives you a bit of an insight into your soul and into who you are, and so yeah, I totally agree. What about you, Carl? What do you think?
Well, I was wondering, would this be a simple explanation that the Akashic Records is where all of the karma of all of our lifetimes is stored? Is that a simple explanation?
Yes, in the sense that your karma can certainly be read and looked at within the Akashic Records, but kind of think of it as our karma is. This is my definition of karma. First of all, I always like to define things if we're going to talk about the higher concepts, because we all have our different frame of references and experiences, and we might, be sharing different ideas from different traditions or experiences in our lives. So my view, or my frame of reference definition of karma, is that it's a series, it's what I call a karmic pattern. So it's a series of choices that a soul might make in a particular lifetime that is not in alignment with who that soul really is at soul level. So, we all probably can think of times in our lives where we made a decision later on, we were like, that really isn't a match for who I am.
Yeah.
And I either have to carry on, and in comes the chain of choice and consequence, right? So I really have to carry on with that particular alley I've walked down, until the end, until the conclusion, or I can make a choice to do something different. So anything, and so let's imagine like somebody living in, I don't know, medieval times. I'm going to make it a female because that's my perspective currently. So a female marries a person. She had a feeling in her gut that wasn't the right person for her, and it ends up being a disastrous marriage. But she can't get out of it because in those days you couldn't get out of marriage, unless she wanted to be a woman of ill repute or, something else, whatever.
Yeah.
Try and run off with, Bob the blacksmith from the next village or something. There wasn't really much chance, was there?
No.
So that is an example, because perhaps that soul has a divine soul blueprint that resonates to divine truth. And so that means for that soul, they're not living their truth.
Yeah.
And that is what creates karma, or a karmic pattern. Now you live enough of those lives, it kind of builds up, and you get enough patterns created. If you're not consciously aware of clearing them or working on yourself in some way, that you end up just re-attracting those similar kinds of situations again and again in some of the following or all of the following lifetimes.
Well, I mean, life is a playground. It's a learning ground for us, and you did mention soul blueprint a number of times, and I think it's really important for us to touch on the soul blueprint, because I've the last few days I've really been thinking about the soul blueprint, and I've been thinking about, if we first, before we go into that, I'm going to get you to explain exactly what a soul blueprint is, and then I'll bring up my question.
So yeah, I'd love to. So hopefully, Carl, did I shed any light on your question as well, just before I talk about the soul blueprint?
Absolutely. And I was just, I don't want to detour here, but I was just considering, Akashic Records must also hold our good choices and the good karma too, right?
Yay!
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So perfect.
Yeah.
And
that's the fun part.
Yes, and you can do that too. So you can literally, it's like Google. So you can, when you're looking at your Akashic Records, you can set a frame of reference for, I really have some clearing to do in my life, because the majority of clients come to me with a block or a restriction. Oh, sorry about that. Something going on my computer here. Hang on a sec. Crazy. Can you guys actually hear that, or is that just me?
Oh no,
I'm trying to stop it.
It's okay. You can't hear it very much, so it's all good.
Worries. We'll just
it should stop in a sec. There we go. I'm so sorry about that. I thought I'd blocked that all out.
That's
Apologies.
all good.
It must be the universe calling.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. So we were just talking about, remind me what we were just talking about, because I tend to start to channel.
The good karma for the Akashic Records.
Yeah. So yes, we can actually mine good karma So we can mine, what if, and this is somebody has proposed this for a long time. I don't know if you're aware of this guy called Lee Carroll, who is
yes,
a channeler.
Oh,
yeah, love him.
He talks about mining the Akash, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is. So you can say for him, he was a sound engineer, very shy guy, you know, didn't want to be at the front of the room channeling some entity called Cryon. He had to figure out the way to speak clearly and get the information across. And so Cryon said to him, why don't you find a past life that relates to you having been a great orator, because you were. And so he did. And that's how he became such a great public speaper. So we can all like mine our Akash. Yeah.
But I do listen to Cryon, and I think he's fantastic. And yeah, but that's some interesting information. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So great. So can you keep me on point and tell me what the next question was again?
Okay. Can you go a little bit into what our soul blueprint is, please?
Yes, certainly. So imagine this. We're, you know, people often talk about consciousness as being like a drop in the ocean. So let's imagine, you know, the massiveness of the singularity, consciousness, whatever that is. We don't really know for sure, but we're all kind of working to connect with it. And so one little drop separates itself off to become an individual piece of consciousness or a soul. And so then the soul then has to sort itself out into some kind of mechanism or energetic being that can then go into other dimensions to know itself, not in just the single first or second dimension, but all the other dimensions and the third dimension into which we incarnate. So it does that by generating 8 different energy centers and initially living with 1 or 2 different soul groups that are most like its unique energetic expression. And that's the divine soul blueprint. And then once it does that, it knows itself very well, and then it can go off to a different star system or another soul group or whatever it might be to learn about itself from a different perspective. And so that's all the soul wants to do ever, is to learn about itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was curious, if we've got our soul blueprint and our soul has decided before incarnating as to what this life is going to be, what lessons we are going to learn, does our soul at any point during our lifetime change its soul blueprint? Because say we came onto this earth and our soul has said, okay, well, in order to be able to learn these lessons, maybe you've got to go through, you know, these hard times, you've got to go through poverty or whatever it is to be able to learn what you need to learn. Is there at any time that you can actually change that soul blueprint and say, well, you know, I've kind of learned what I need to learn right now. So now I want to change how, you know, I want to be able to bring that abundance into my life. Kind of, because I was reading something the other day where someone was asking that question. And they're like, but if my soul's decided that I've got to go through this, but I really want to have that abundance, I really want to have that, you know, a different type of life, how would that happen? How can your soul sort of like change that?
just 2 questions in one there, Jennifer.
Yes,
that's
totally.
interesting. So first of all, it's been my experience, because of the way I read for clients, that the soul blueprint itself, think of that as literally a blueprint. It's unchanging. Okay.
Yes.
Think of you can think of it as the bare bones of the soul or the structure of a house, right? It's probably, once a house is built, it's probably not really a good idea to change the blueprint.
No.
Unless you're going to add on something that is complementary or that, you know, the original structure can hold. So the soul blueprint itself is unchanging, but what the soul chooses from life to life, from life lessons, can be different in every life. Yeah.
And depending on what lessons you've learned.
Right. What you've managed to clear for yourself and what karma you've got that may be causing energetic blocks and restrictions so you can't access your soul blueprint, those could prevent you from creating the abundance you want in a particular life, for example.
Wouldn't
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
wouldn't human free will allow you to change your blueprint?
Think of it as a system, like an original construct from creator consciousness, greater than self, God, put your name there, whatever your term is. And so it's almost like that's what consciousness chose to do.
Mm-hmm.
So as a piece of consciousness incarnated in a human body, we're actually a bit limited by what we can do. But something that some souls do is they start to move away from their original divine soul blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that by making loads and loads of different and opposing choices in many, many lifetimes.
Okay.
And so they literally lose a sense of themselves as a soul.
So if we're
so
going away from our original soul blueprint, then we would start to recognize that, wouldn't we? Because we would start to feel like we're not being our true self. Would we know that we're moving away from what our original soul blueprint is? You wouldn't know it?
Possibly not.
So you could go a whole lifetime and not know.
Right. But you could go several lifetimes and then find yourself in a very, very difficult lifetime because the point of connecting with your divine soul blueprint is that's where we get our vital force energy from, aka prana or chi. So that's our life force. So if we don't have that, then we start to go off in different directions, and some people can disconnect almost completely from their original soul blueprint, and that can end up in very difficult, stressful, traumatic lives. Or you could use the term negative, but that just means not aligned to your soul blueprint originally.
I wonder if that's what happens to people who commit suicide. They've lost their way from their soul blueprint.
I would see that as a human situation. So suicidal ideation comes from an individual's lack of chemical balance in the brain, for example, or it can come from a pre-existing mental or medical condition. I would say it may happen to somebody who's disconnected from their soul blueprint and they feel an absolute loss of hope, in any future that they can see from themselves. That could be an entirely possible outcome, but I know I'm like nitpicking here, but that's how the energy is coming through for me as I'm answering your questions. So I hope you don't feel like I'm being too picky about trying to define it. But essentially, it comes down to how many, choices in a trajectory, if you like, of how many lives a person makes. Sometimes people will choose to check out. And that is sometimes a pre-existing idea or lesson that the soul itself has set up.
Exactly. And I was just about to say, in those sort of situations, because I have had people in my life that have done that. Me too. Yeah. And I think most of us know somebody to some degree, but I've always believed that our soul, they have a purpose for our life, and once that purpose for that lifetime is kind of like has been fulfilled, then we may move on, and they may choose to check out, whether it's in that way, whether we've got illness, whatever it is. And I think that there are situations that where the person feels completely disconnected from their higher self. At that point, they feel completely separate from who they truly are, and at that point, I think it can lead to the lead up to suicidal ideation. So, but that's a very interesting question, Carl.
Like you guys, I know too many people personally that's happened to. I'm gonna switch gears here a little bit. I've read, and I find this fascinating, that not only are you an expert in Akashic Records, but you are an empath, a medium, and a medical intuitive. How do those play into what you do overall with Akashic Records?
I don't really ask for those to come in. I wouldn't say I was taught by Richard Bandler initially, who's one of the originators of NLP. And he used to call being called an expert as like expert little dribble, you know, which kind of changes the whole word. I've certainly experienced those things happening. I wouldn't, like with the medical intuition, it only comes in specific circumstances. So I kind of keep that under the umbrella of everything else I do. With the mediumship, the same. I did study mediumship for quite a while, but it seems to me I get readings that just come in because there's a healing required, or because the person we're already in their records, which is fifth dimensional awareness. And that's where souls can be read. So other souls go, hey, I was with this person in life, you know, and I want to bring through this information. Oh, I've just got the chills. So, that's what they call it. It's really funny. It's called piloerection, you know, when all the hairs on your arms stand up. That's kind of the nature of Akashic energy. So I obviously got some kind of something going on there, as I mentioned that subject. So think of it that way. Think of it like a psychic is somebody who can read present life energy and look at possibilities and probabilities, right? You know, like next week you will see a black cat cross your path. I'm making fun. I don't, you know, I don't intend to make fun of psychic people because they do great predictions, which aren't really my specialty. But then you've got a psychic medium who's somebody that can actually look at the relationships energetically around an individual, you know, and that's how they read people who might have passed. And then you've got an Akashic Records reader, which I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I kind of joke about it being like a psychic medium on crack. It's like you can see like all, you know, multi-dimensional versions of a soul and all its connections as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's why those experiences happen sometimes. Yes, and I have always been highly empathic, Carl. That's true. I agree.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm a highly empathic person too, and you know, for a long time it was difficult because, and even sometimes today it's difficult because, you know, you pick up the energies of everybody. It's just but I think it can be such a blessing too. I think being an empath can be such a blessing in many aspects. But what I want to ask you is, you do readings, you do Akashic Records readings for people.
I do indeed, yeah.
Do you ever, as you're doing the Akashic Record readings, do you ever bring in the angels or other divine beings at those particular points?
There are occasions, yes, but it's always related to the frame of reference I'm setting for the client. So in my early days, I worked with a particular teacher, and we were both at a particular stage in our development. And one of my oldest clients, I was reading for her, and it was literally like I saw a purple curtain get pulled back in front of my psychic eye, and in walked this ascended master, who's a Hindu ascended master. And I was like, oh, I must be out of the Akashic Records, because that's what I've been taught, that when you get a visitor like that. And he actually said, no, you did nothing wrong. I have a particular message for the client. So then he transmitted his message and left.
Wow, cool.
And so the curtain went back. And then this teacher that I was working with, in her second book, you know, later on, she goes, oh, actually, sometimes you will encounter ascended masters or angelic beings or other beings during records readings. And I was like, oh, great.
That's nice.
Me being me, empathic me, I was like, oh no, I'm not doing the great job for the client, you know. I must have done something wrong. So yes, it depending on what's needed, then a different energy might come in. That's true. Yes.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
I'm really curious about your 2010 spontaneous awakening to Akashic, to the Akash. Can you elaborate a little bit on? I'm just really curious about that. That must have been an amazing experience.
It was a bit of everything, Carl, because I think sometimes people who end up working in this field have a calling, you know, or a reason to be doing it. And so the way it worked for me in 2010 was actually the year my dear mum passed away. When she got very unwell, and I won't go into the reasons here because it's a bit political, so we'll keep that away from this kind of thing. I actually got a book in the mail that I hadn't ordered about the Akashic Records, and I was in a spiritual book club at the time, and I was like, but I didn't ask for this one, you know. Anyway,
the universe sent it to you.
The universe sent it to me accidentally, quotes unquote. So I picked up this book, and I was already doing energy work. And at the time, I was working with a shaman here in Wichita. Wichita does have shamans, by the way, but this one had actually has left by now. So anyway, I opened this book and I felt all this energy move over my body, and it really freaked me out. And literally after reading the first few chapters of that book, that's when I got my opening. I found I could read the records. It was like it gave me a framework for everything I've been doing up to that point. And so that was the opening that year. And then later that year, I also lost one of my dearest friends, and that was a really big shock. So I feel like sometimes loved ones guide us on the way. You know, that it's their time to go, and they kind of open a window for us. So I feel like all of that was connected in that year. So thank you for asking, Carl. I appreciate it.
So the Akash, if somebody is really wanting to start, because it's something that I would love to be able to read the Akash. It's not something that I do at this point, but I'm very curious about it. And if we were wanting to do that, the third eye would play a big part in that, wouldn't it? So for your third eye to be open at that particular point in time, what does it feel like when you're actually reading the Akashic Records?
Oh, that's so interesting, because you've raised something that a lot of people think to be the case, that the Akashic Records is all about. It's a bit like, you know, streaming another channel on your TV, you know, like $4.99 a month. What can I get for this? You know? But it's actually, it can really depend on the individual, their experience of the records. So it's actually all chakras are involved, not just the third eye. All energy is involved. And so the more we work on ourselves vibrationally, you know, through spiritual practice and meditation, the better the records is for everyone. And that when it comes to how each person works in the records, I'm very kinesthetic. I'm empathic. So, you know, I was just talking about things like hair sticking up on your arms. That's one of the ways I get to know that I'm saying something that's absolutely true for somebody I'm connecting with. And so I happen to be very clairaudient. So that's clear hearing. So I get a lot of messages that I hear. If somebody was more clairvoyant, I do get to see as well, but it tends to come in with voices first. So I have this view, you see, that everyone has a different primary clair. And so for them, you know, like somebody might be a gut feel person, so they're going to feel stuff first. Yeah,
that's where I tend to sit. So but I do get the, like you said, the hair standing on your body and stuff. I do get that as well when messages are coming through. So so I think it depends on the individual. And I do hear some messages come in. So but I'm curious, and I'm still on my journey as we all are. So
yay.
I do have a question. I wondered, your empathic and intuitive abilities, does it ever cause you any awkward moments in your personal life when you're just chatting with somebody who has no clue?
It would do.
Yeah. What I've learned over the years, Carl, is how to manage that. Because for some people who are highly empathic and highly sensitive, often there's a reason from their younger life where they've had to be, like there was some aspects of my childhood where I had to really learn to be on my guard at home. So I naturally, by default, used to expand my energy field to sense who was coming. So for a lot of people who are highly intuitive people, hips, you know, highly sensitive people, HSPs, whether they've connected the dots yet or not, they're actually in that scenario. So what I learned to do over time was to manage my energy and manage my chi. But one of the things that can sort of put the cat amongst the pigeons regards this energy management stuff is how can I put it, recreational substances. So I mean, an example of this was my second husband. We were out one night, I think it was Red Lobster or somewhere like that, you know, and we were at the bar. It was in Branson, which is in Missouri, where a lot of people go for holidays and things. And so we were there, and we were just finishing up dinner, and I confess I'd had an alcoholic coffee. You know, I'm not a great drinker, and I barely touch it these days because of professional reasons, and I was feeling a bit jolly, and my then husband said, oh, why don't you read that guy at the bar, you know, because he knew kind of I could do that. So I did, and anyway, he went up to pay, and I left, and I was out by our truck, and he said to me, oh, tell me about that, you know, about the guy. And I said, oh, I saw these massive fish jumping around his head. They had really like silvery scales. I don't know what that was about, but that's all I saw. And he said, oh my God, he said, that guy, he said, I talked to him when I was paying the bill. He's here for a local bass fishing competition.
Okay.
Because it's all the lake, you know, there's lakes at Branson. And at that point, he opened the door for me, and the door hit me in the head. And I take that as a, you know, from my guide.
Don't like, ever do that.
Yeah. Don't be voyeuristic. It's not, so it's, you know, while we can feel like, oh, we're being attacked on all sides, it's also, you know, energetically speaking, it's our responsibility also to manage our energy in specific ways. So I think finding that fine balance for anyone who's sensitive or empathic is really going to help them on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, because being an empath and being highly sensitive to people's energies, I know myself personally, I sense, like I said, 2021 was a crazy year with COVID and everything else that was going on. This year we've come in where even more stuff's been happening. So can you tune into that fear and judgment and chaos in this collective energy at the moment? Like, are you feeling that as well? Especially in 2021? Yeah, it's been a crazy year.
Two people I talked with recently, one was my accountant, because, you know, it's tax season, right?
Yeah.
It is in the States anyway. Would you agree, Carl? Tax season, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the fun times. Ours is in June, which is really strange. Why you would have a tax season in June, but you've got until December to pay if you need to pay tax. So
right. You want to try the UK, it's like, I think it's March till April. How weird is that? Some king or queen must have, you know, decided on that. Anyway, because I used to run a business in the UK, that's why I know about that.
Okay.
So cut a long story short, now I've gone blank.
No, you were talking. You were talking to two people, your accountant, about the collective energy at the moment.
Yes, literally, when I was discussing this, and this, you know, all of us cried in the conversations. I have literally noticed how many people are so deeply moved by the situation in Ukraine. And my accountant, I thought this was brilliant. She said she went and hired an Airbnb, you know, online in Ukraine for people to stay in.
Oh, nice.
What a brilliant way to help people out. And she said she got the most amazing thank you messages back.
Oh,
so
that's
it's like
beautiful.
It's really hitting everyone at the heart level, I feel. And I did a prediction at the beginning of the year, and I kept writing about Russian pipelines. And I was like, why am I writing? I thought maybe, oh, we'll have an oil spill or something. And now I get what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, so, you know, it's really, and I actually found I had to stop listening to the news as much as I was the first few days, because I was literally crying when I heard the stories. I don't know how you guys have been feeling about all of this.
Well, I deliberately don't watch the news because the energy is just too strong for me. So I don't watch the news. And in fact, people say, oh, what's happening with such and such? And I go, no idea, because I don't watch the news.
I just sit here all day and go,
we'll just meditate all day. Wouldn't that be cool?
I have to ask you, you know, I'm curious about that medical intuitive, simply because, and Jennifer is really aware of this, because I'm a facilitator of an online Facebook group called the Power of Eight Healing Group, and we have members from around the globe. As a matter of fact, just a few hours ago, we had Jennifer was on it, and we healed. We focused our healing intentions upon a woman with cancer, but we had people from Spain and from Romania and the United States and Australia. And it would be great to have a medical intuitive join my Power of Eight, but that might put a little burden on you to come on and do that.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the invitation. I did pretty intense energy work for 5 years or so.
Yeah.
And it really helped me understand that, depending on the individual, there are appropriate focuses or foci, whatever the word is, for our gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that my chi has much more longevity in a day. I get less tired working when I work in the records at that kind of level, the fifth dimensional awareness, than if I work with local energy. So what tends to happen for me is if I'm in the records, I might get some information to suggest to somebody, maybe you should get that checked out, or have you looked at your magnesium levels or something like that? Because the other thing is I'm not a medical practitioner. I've learned a lot about energy, but I keep coming back to the frame of reference in the Akashic Records. It's like what you put in, you get out.
Yeah.
So for me as a practitioner, if I was going to do that sort of work, I much prefer working with somebody who's got some medical awareness, and I can go, there's this, this, and this. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to diagnose. So that I tend to find I run out of chi basically too quickly, and I can't do enough readings, and so I don't think it's the area where my gift is meant to be focused.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the invitation. Thank you, Carl.
So I would like to ask this. I know you've taken Jennifer through the Akashic Records process. If somebody comes to you, what is that process that you will take a client through? Is it long and involved? Is it up to the individual on what you do?
Okay, so for each individual, I would ask for any legal names in this life, because some people change their names, or their online persona only has a nickname or something, so I'm not going to know what their legal name is, or the email or whatever. And I ask for their date of birth and their place of birth, and that's all I need to know. And then I attune to their Akashic Records using that information, and being sure, I do a process where I check whether they have something called blocks to truth or not, which can be conditions that mean I can't read their soul blueprint clearly at the time being. It doesn't happen very often, but I have a check process that I do. So once I know I can read clearly for them, I do 12 different readings, but the one that Jennifer had was, I think, the Soul Star reading.
The Soul Star reading, yep.
Where you learn about your divine soul blueprint, any blocks and restrictions that are ready to be cleared from present life, and also one past life. So it gives you like a really good, like dip your toe in the Akashic waters kind of thing.
Yep.
Gives you a really good idea. But I do 12 different readings. So as long as I can attune to that person's soul blueprint, I can read for them. It's really that simple. And then the person can choose. Like some people want to know about their soul purpose. Some people want to know more about their life lessons. Some people are really focused on relationships. And some people just have a list of general questions that they want to ask because they're super curious. So as long as I have that, then we can just go in whatever direction based on the 12 types of readings I do that a client wants.
Awesome. Yeah.
Cool. Wow, that has been a lot of information on the Akashic Records, and I definitely recommend people go and get a reading, because it is so fascinating to learn about your soul and your divine blueprint, and it gives you a bit of an insight into your soul purpose and all of that information. So if people want to get in touch with you and they want to get their Akashic Records read, where can they go to, Sarah?
Thanks so much for asking, Jennifer. Well, my main site is called Mom on a Spiritual Journey, and that's spelled MOM the American way, even though I'm originally a Brit. So momonaspiritualjourney.com, and all the information is there on the different reading types. I also do intuitive coaching. So there's coaching sessions, and there's a client portal. You can join the portal and chat with me there. And I've written that blog since 2010, since my mum passed, because she told me to do it, Carl. She told me to write a blog and tell people. When she was very ill, she admitted that she had gifts like me. She kept it hidden for most of her life. But she admitted it, and she said, you should write about what you do online. That's what she said. So that's why it's called Mum on a Spiritual Journey. It's not really me, it's my mum. Only she'll forgive me for spelling it the American way, right? Because I'm in the States.
I'm sure she will. I'm sure she will. Now, Carl, do you have any final questions for Sarah before we wrap up the interview?
Just to remind people, we've been speaking to Sarah Lawrence, an Akashic Records expert, a medium, medical intuitive, an empath, all kinds of cool stuff. It's been a blessing to have you on our show today, right here on Your Spiritual Shift.
And I have loved getting back in touch with you again, Sarah, after a year of craziness. But thank you so much for being here with us today and going a bit into the Akashics and what we can do to help on our own spiritual journey. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks very much. And thanks to Carl and for all your lovely questions. I really enjoyed myself. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.